Ladies and gentlemen, Rotogrinders, welcome back to the Blitz, Week 5. My name is Alex Dunlap. You can find me on Twitter at RosterWatch. You can find all of my content at rosterwatch.com and hear me on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, Saturdays, 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern, Sundays, the game day edition, 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern. Joined, as always, by Mr. Derek Carty. You can find him on Twitter at Derek Carty. He's the creator. He's the curator. He's the mathematician, the magician, the mastermind, the mythical creature, the man behind the Blitz projection system at rotogrinders.com, which you can find at rotogrinders.com/the-blitz. You can pull it right up into Lineup HQ. It is a great tool for anybody to use to get their projections. It's been absolutely crushing this year. Great time to jump on and get the Blitz. Is right now. And of course, you can find all of his content over at rotogrinders.com. Joining us, as always, the Chief Justice 06. He is Will Priester. That is at Chief Justice 06 on Twitter and across the DFS streets. All of his content, from football to basketball to baseball to prize picks to card collecting, all over at rotogrinders.com. Of course, Chief is an epic tournament player. Carty likes to play in tournaments, but has a little bit more of a cash game kind of optimal mind. I find myself a little bit more on Carty's side. We will go through this slate, talking about running backs, wide receivers, quarterbacks, tight ends, and then we will get to the Blitz survey where we'll talk about some of our favorite stacks. We will then have our conviction and consequences segment where we give our producer Steve, who's generally here. We have our great producer Devin subbing in today, but we will have our 4-man conviction plays for the 4-man contest, and where we'll hand out a quarterback once again to our good friend Will, who had just a terrible luck last week. I believe we gave him Teddy Bridgewater. He ended up at the very bottom of the standings last week. So hopefully we'll give him a better quarterback this week. We can get Will up off the floor, man. I ended up taking down cash game number 3. So I think I edged out Carty by like 0.15 points. So clearly Carty would have been cashing because we both had monsters right there at the very top. I felt like a real weasel squeaking that thing out against Carty, but yeah, 3. I need to be playing more cash games on DraftKings this year, apparently. And now that I've jinxed myself, let's talk about this slate. Carty, we need to get a 30,000-foot view from each of you. Let's pretend like your brother, the rapper Playboy Carty, walks up to you and says, "Carty, I'm the most famous Carty there is. I don't want to hear anything from you about being on ESPN or being on Rotogrinders, anything else. I'm more famous, but I need to know how to win in DFS this week. How the hell am I going to do it, brother?"
And I'm going to give that guy such good advice because he's the first guy in several weeks that hasn't like punched me or like done something to like physically upset me. So Playboy Carty's getting all the advice.
Or like taking your sub sandwich and stuffed it down his pants.
Yeah. It's an interesting week in that I feel like the general build is fairly obvious, but there's definitely several different pieces you can kind of mix and match. Like there's not a whole lot of clarity, I feel like, at a couple positions. So it's just kind of a weird week. I feel like it's kind of a tight pool, but there's like not a lot of like have to have plays.
Huh. All right. Chief, does that make it good for tournaments? I mean, not a lot of have to have plays, and maybe some ownership that's spread out a little bit could be interesting for you. How's your player pool looking this week? And what's your 30,000-foot view on the slate? Is it one you like? Is it a juicy one?
Well, I think every slate's juicy just because there's always an edge somewhere, right? And, you know, it might not be obvious on the surface, but I think we just have to look through and find it, which is why we do this show every week. And I'm telling you, every week I pull up the Blitz, something pops out at me that I did not expect. And really, if you've been following the Blitz and some of the things we've talked about are highlighted, I'm not saying this because I'm on the show. I'm saying it because it's true. Most of these things that would kind of get you on a different build have all worked out. Like they've pretty much all worked out. Outside of maybe Mike Davis versus Cordero Patterson. We'll talk about that again. But outside of that, I think, because I think we'll still see some people be a little bit more popular than they should, it gives us these builds that could be optimal in other spaces, right? Like, of course, when you look at like quarterback, and I'm using that as an example, I know we're getting there, but we might have a quarterback that's a little bit higher on than maybe he should be this week. And now we got all these other guys where it's like, well, nobody's talking about this guy, nobody's talking about that guy. And so that's what I think. I think this is a week where there's popular opinion, and popular opinion could lead you down a road of unsuccess overall. Not that you won't cash, but if you want to win big, I think getting off the popular opinion is for sure the way to go.
And Chief's right about some of these big winners, man. We just love hearing, one of our listeners and viewers this year has already, shipped us the screenshot from winning the $1 million, and some other just really, really big hits this year. We love seeing them, and certainly please continue to send those. We absolutely love it. Of course,
we've had a lot of good ones. We've had a couple, I think, live final ticket winners. We've had
man.
Several like 6-figure guys. Like it's been a good year. So congratulations to everybody for real.
You love to see it. You also love to see you guys liking and subscribing here on YouTube. If you're watching it live, of course, the Blitz is free this week. It's usually behind the paywall. So you can check out rotogrinders.com. You can get a membership over there, daily strategy shows that'll help you, and FanDuel, DraftKings. Also a bunch of free daily shows, fantasy sports advice, different picks, live chats, and more. Also make sure and subscribe to the Rotogrinders daily fantasy football podcast feed. This show will be on there, but there's a ton of free shows every week. I subscribe, and it's great, man. They got the show with Lord Reeves and Daigle. That's the one I listen to every week. They got the one with the football guys dudes, the PFF dudes, Blender's on there. Jamino's ownership report. There's a ton of great stuff there. They're published throughout the NFL season. So check it out over there. If you're watching on YouTube, again, please like and subscribe. Helps with the channel. Boys, with all that being said, you guys want to do this? We can start at the quarterback spot.
Let's do it.
Okay, so Chief, you said earlier that you on DraftKings that Kim, listen, we generally kind of start at the top and kind of move down, but I think let's just start with the Trey Lance elephant in the room. Is that what you were saying? I mean, I saw Jamino's ownership projections last night. I haven't looked today, but he was around 15% projected ownership last night, and while in a vacuum, that's not a huge ownership percentage. At the quarterback spot, you generally don't see these guys getting above that 10. So he's going to be a popular quarterback for who he is, and you definitely see ways for him to fail. Then again, the one time we see him in action, one half of football, 21 fantasy points. A lot of that did come on a completely busted route by completely busted coverage by Jamal Adams on that Deebo Samuel catch. With that said, what do you think, Chief? Just starting with you, you were the one who mentioned it. Were you talking about Trey Lance when you said he was going to be a popular play that a lot of people were going to be on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just think historically, when you see quarterbacks at 15%, I mean, that's actually pretty high, like for quarterback. Like if this was wide receiver, okay, but quarterback where you can only play one and he's at 15%. And I mean, he's still a rookie quarterback, just like all these other ones. Like I don't see, and he's 5,700. He's not 5K. He's not 4,800. He's getting close to like the mid-range, like, Derek Carr or Joe Burrow. And I'm not saying I would play those guys this weekend. I'm not saying I wouldn't. I'm saying in terms of salary, and I think, guys that can get the job done, I definitely think these are guys that possibly could. So, when I just kind of look at that and look at the ownership, I like Trey Lance. I like what we think that he can do, but we still don't know that yet. And so I think, on a week like this, where we're getting a quarterback that's unproven against a pretty hot Arizona team. I mean, just last week they played the Rams. It's not like the Rams ran up the score. I think they only scored 20 points, 17. It's not like the Rams just came in and it was like 45-30 or 45-38. The Rams didn't really score any points. So I'm not buying into the fact that Trey Lance is going to step into Arizona and just suddenly save the San Francisco 49ers. I'm actually taking a full fade on Trey Lance this week, just because I think for quarterback and an unproven quarterback, and what I think is going to be a tough game for him, I think the ownership's too high. And I think it all goes back to something as simple as you said, busted coverage, 75-yard touchdown, you take that away, where's he at? You know what I mean? So, and I know it was one half of football, but I still think Trey Lance is going to have a little bit tougher time than what we think. So I'm going to take the fade on.
Carty, we talked about it on the SiriusXM show this morning when you were nice enough to come on. And like I mentioned to you, I kind of like the Arizona defense just because with no George Kittle, I mean, I think that he would have largely been held to sort of helping out against some of that edge rush that these Cardinals can kind of bring against a rookie quarterback. Without him, I feel like that definitely, that hurts Trey Lance. I feel like it hurts Trey Lance in more ways than just being down one pass catcher, if that makes sense. What do you think about Lance? He's going to be so popular. Are you on him? I mean, does the Blitz even have him popping in? I mean, because the point is he's only 5,700. And so he can make some other things happen in a week where we want to pay up for some other guys that we'll get to. Is he popping in any Blitz optimals? How's this thing shaking out for you?
Yeah, so there's 3 quarterbacks that are kind of in the top tier for the Blitz in terms of smash percentage. And Trey Lance is one of them, but he's the one I'm least considering for cash games at least. And I think especially for GPPs with how high owned he's going to be, like San Francisco stacks don't really project that well unless you do like a skinny stack or something. The thing with Trey Lance is that even though he does project well, 21.5 points, he's like the second highest point per dollar guy on the slate. Like he projects well, but like you don't have to jam this guy in. This guy is not a sure thing. Like, have we not learned our lesson the last couple of weeks with Justin Fields? Like that is the floor for these rookie quarterbacks. I don't care what the pedigree is, how high they got drafted in the draft. On average, first round rookie quarterbacks are the worst starting quarterbacks in football their first year. But people just don't want to believe that because they see the hype and the draft pick and everything else. Rookie quarterbacks are generally not good their first year, at least with their arms. They can rush, they can score points that way. And Trey Lance can certainly do that. But there's a good chance that he's going to struggle throwing the ball to start out. And basically all the quotes we've gotten from the San Francisco coaching staff this week have been along the lines of, well, there's going to be some growing pains. Well, it might be an adjustment for Lance. It's not like they're like, oh yeah, he's ready to go. He's going to tear shit up. Like that's just not like the impression that we're getting from them. This is a team that likes to run the ball to begin with, a very run heavy team. Teams tend to run even more when they have a rookie quarterback. He's going to be missing George Kittle. More than anything else though, is that we have Daniel Jones for 300 more. Daniel Jones is the same type of quarterback, but more secure and better. He's a young quarterback who can score points with his legs, who now has actually proven that he can come into his own and throw the ball. He's been improved so much as a passer this year and he's in a really good spot too. He's also in a dome. He's also against a fast-paced offense. Like he's 300 more. He's better. He's safer. I even hate the word safe, but he's safer. So I just don't see any need to go with Trey Lance when you have Daniel Jones right there and you know so much more what you're getting with him.
So we'll get down to this Daniel Jones territory here in a second, but I'd like to just, if we could just go back up to the very top. And Carty, I'll just stick with you quickly. Is the Blitz popping out any Kyler Murray? I mean, he's 8K on DraftKings. It's all right.
I mean, he projects well, obviously, but he's not showing up in like optimal lineups because of the price.
Chief, what about whenever you're putting together lineups and you're putting together builds? Are you getting any Kyler Murray? Because it just seems like it's so hard to find any way to stack him for tournaments when you consider the fact that DeAndre Hopkins, even though his price has come down a little bit, that's still a stack that's going to cost you almost 16K between those two guys. And then, I mean, who knows? Just pin the tail on the donkey, spin yourself around and blindfold yourself and pin it on AJ Green or Rondale or Kirk. It's really, really hard to figure out what you're going to be doing there. But I know that you like to do weird stuff that other people aren't doing. Are you doing any of that stuff this week?
Man, it's going to be tough to I think get Kyler this week just because of some of the other things I want to do in other positions. So I do like Kyler, right? But I'm not sure and hear what I'm saying, what I'm not saying, because he can have an upside game in any spot. This just doesn't seem like the game where the upside will be there completely. You get what I'm saying? Like, yeah, of course he could come out and throw for 5 touchdowns and they could just run away with the game. But I don't know if they're going to need him to be Superman this week. And I think that's what, we may need at our quarterback position. So I love Kyler. Think he's a great play, but I'm not going to have him in my pool this week.
I know Carty's not going to be playing Tom Brady. I know Carty probably is not going to be playing Aaron Rodgers, but I could see Carty playing Jalen Hurts, and definitely I could see Carty playing Dak Prescott. So I see Carty shaking his head or nodding his head about Dak. But just staying with you real quickly, Philadelphia going in to play your Carolina Panthers. What do you think of Jalen this week? It doesn't feel like, Jamino has his ownership percentage at just 4%, and he's been very, very steady, very good. I know the Carolinas had a much better defense. You and I have been noticing it since the first week of the season, but they are a little bit banged up in the secondary. They're having to bring in reinforcements and Stephon Gilmore, but he won't be available until next week, right?
Yeah, so a couple of weeks. I think he's maybe a week or two out. So he's not going to be there for sure this week at all.
So what do you think about Jalen? And then I also want to ask both of you guys about that.
Yeah, I absolutely think Jalen's in play this week, simply because I am expecting the Eagles to be behind. I mean, I'm not expecting them to be behind like 30 points, but, I think this is a game where Carolina should be able to control the game. We are at home, so I feel pretty good about us being able to score points. And we've proven that we can score points this year, which is good. So I think Jalen's a great play, just from a game script perspective. And, even if you're kind of looking at the blitz level game factors, I mean, we should be fine in terms of plays run. We're kind of in that second tier bunch where you've got like Dallas and the Giants at like 128.9, and then we're right there at 128.7. So we're kind of right there. So that's another reason why I'm pretty excited. So yeah, I'm for sure in on Jalen Hurts and his pass catchers this week.
Carty, what about Dak? We mentioned him, and I'm looking right here underneath Dak. Dak is 6,900 on DraftKings. At 6,500 is Kirk Cousins. Come on, man, he's home. He's in a dome. Well, it's a great matchup. It can't be a Carty special. No Kirk Cousins for you this week. It doesn't seem like you're too interested.
Not as a cash play. Like, I think Cousins is fine. I think Minnesota stacks are certainly fine. But I like Dak more. Dak is the better quarterback. Dak has really good weapons. Like, he's at home in a dome also. It projects as a much faster game pace. This Minnesota-Detroit game projects a little below average for pace, whereas Dallas-New York projects as the second fastest pace game on the slate. So for me, I'll take Dak. Like I said, there's kind of like a tier of top 3 quarterbacks for the blitz in terms of smash percentage. It's Jones, it's Lance, and it's Dak. So Dak and Jones are the 2 that I'm really deciding on between cash games. Like, if you want to do Lance, like, you can do it, go ahead. But I just don't see why you play him over Daniel Jones. And if you have the money to get up to Dak, you get up to Dak. So those are kind of the top tier quarterback plays for me this week. At least for cash games.
It feels like a pretty tight pool for you, Carty. It feels like you're really struggling with the whole thing about, whether it's because it doesn't feel like that much to get up from 6K to 6,900 for Dak Prescott. But once you start putting together some of these rosters, like, this is a week we can really use that 900. Is there anybody else who is even on the periphery of what the Blitz likes this week besides the three that you mentioned? Dak, Daniel Jones, and Lance? And then I just want to go to Chief and have him clean up any other quarterbacks that he'd like to touch on before we move on.
Yeah, I mean, there's no one else that I'm considering for cash. In GPPs, you're considering quarterbacks because you like them in stacks, like Tom Brady, like Buck stacks, I think are great this week. So you play Brady there, but in cash, you're not playing anyone like that.
What about you, Chief? I mean, is it a tight player pool for you? It feels like you're in on Jalen Hurts. It feels like you're in on Dak. Who else are you in on this week? And what does your player pool generally look like? Is it a little tighter than usual?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, no Kyler, in on Dak, in on Hurts, in on Darnold. And I am in on one lower price quarterback that it's not going to get a whole lot of ownership. I've just been watching them play. Seems like they're dialing up a few more runs for them. I do feel like this is a spot where they can score some points as well.
Even though they hate their coach. Even though they hate their coach.
Yeah, and that's Trevor Lawrence. I mean, I think, and so that's the thing, right? Like, so that's another thing when you're looking at the difference between Trevor Lawrence and Trey Lance. Like, Trevor Lawrence has at least had a chance to get through some games, and then you've kind of seen this coaching philosophy change, in my opinion, where the first game they came out and just said, hey, and they did get behind against Houston, but they just kind of let him run around and throw the ball, a million times, right? And it was very unsuccessful. He threw the ball 51 times. But then you look the next game, 33-34. Last week, 24 against Cincinnati. Rushing attempts have steadily been kind of climbing a little bit. And I think that was smart on the coaching staff's part. Allow him to play a little bit closer to how he did in college so he can gain some confidence, right? And then, everything will start to kind of get in sync. That they're not playing some juggernaut defense this week. And so I think Trevor Lawrence, has a shot at, pretty nice day. I know, he's not really, throwing a whole lot of touchdowns each game, but he rushed one in last week. I think Trevor Lawrence is a better version this week than Trey Lance could be against Arizona. So at 5,800, I'm for sure in.
All right. Well, that's definitely interesting. And then not a peep out of anybody about Joe Burrow, who will be getting the T. Higgins back, and looks like they won't have Jair Alexander. The Green Bay won't have Jair Alexander. No,
I like Joe. Okay. Yeah, I like Joe for sure.
Okay. Anybody else that you guys want to talk about before we move on to runners? All right. Well, then let's start at the top. Let's go to running back, and at the very top we have Derrick Henry. Of course, he's going to be very popular. Jamino has him about a 25% ownership percentage over on DraftKings, and clearly he warrants it. For sure, $9,000 on DK. I will say, a lot of Jeremy McNichols last week, and also we had Darrington Evans starting to work back in practice some this week. I don't know if we've gotten official word about him or how that's going to look, but certainly something to keep in mind there. With that said, what I keep thinking about with this game, and where my conviction comes to play Derrick Henry here, even in the face of this ownership, is that if the Jacksonville Jaguars really are kind of quitting on their coach, and it's that they hate their coach and everything like that, like some of the reporting says, I can't imagine a more daunting task, and a task that I would just be less willing to do for a coach that I hate than tackle Derrick Henry in the open field. And so I just think, it's obviously being a matchup. If this is a dejected team, Derrick Henry's a dude who can make you feel even more dejected once you get head to head with him. So that's kind of my general thought. I want to hear both you guys on Derrick Henry. Are you in on him this week? It's been a tough I guess a tough nut to crack, as far as which weeks to play Derrick Henry. Carty, what do you think, brother?
Yeah, I definitely like Henry this week. He projects easily as the top running back. The Blitz likes him a lot. I think it's like a 26.5 point projection or something crazy like that. Higher than other systems on Henry. I don't think he is an absolute must play though, because we do have quite a few really good mid-range running backs. And so I think at the ownership, you probably just find a way to get him in there, but like builds feel like they don't fit together as well as you want them to with Henry. So I think that's the issue more than anything else. But obviously he's really good. He gets, 92% of his team's carries. He's been getting, to this point in the year, he has, I think, 11 or 12% of the targets. That was down last week, which is concerning. He's never done that before. Is this just an anomaly? Like if he goes back to a 4% target share, that's not as appealing. But this is a good spot for him, obviously, against Jacksonville. I think the part of the matchup that a lot of people have missed when they talk about this is that Jacksonville has been the fastest paced offense in all of football this year, which means more plays for the Titans to run, more runs for Derrick Henry, good game script. I have nothing bad to say about Henry other than he's just expensive. You got to find a way to make a build work that you like. I don't think he's a necessity, but he's definitely very much in play.
Chief, what do you think, man? I mean, don't you think Vrabel is embarrassed coming off some kind of cockamamie loss to the Jets? He says this is a down and out division opponent. coach in disarray. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to kick these idiots' ass, and I'm going to run Derrick Henry over and over again, and I'm just going to demoralize these fools. I mean, do you see it playing out like that? And are you interested in Derrick Henry?
I sure hope that's how it works out, because it's definitely going to work out for my Trevor Lawrence, Derrick Henry stacks.
Right.
So yeah, I'm in on Henry. Definitely have him as a top play. Locked him in last week and everything that worked out. Locked Kelsey in and everything last week, didn't work out. No big deal. But yeah, I'm in on Henry. Not a complete lock button this week, just because, like Carty said, I think there are plenty of good running backs in the mid-range that we can utilize. But I still think Derrick Henry's at the top of the list, especially if he's going to keep getting 2 to 3 targets and being able to pick up, 2 or 3 catches, 15 to 30 yards like that. That just helps him out even more for a guy that's weak. It's weird, right? Like with Henry, we pretty much expect him to get 100 yards rushing every week, or at least in the good weeks. So, and this is probably another one of those weeks. In fact, I already know he's probably projected for that much. Yeah.
Projects for 123 right
there
now.
It is. Yeah. See, it's like you just play him. It is what it is.
Yeah, man. All right. And so at the very top, I'm guessing that Carty, is there any, does the Blitz ever get in any Alvin Kamara? It just seems like versus Washington, they've been so miserable this year. But the one thing is that, they've been pretty good at stopping the run. At least they have a really good front seven, and then but on the other side, the Saints are going to be missing Teron Armstead. They're going to be missing their who's their center, Eric McCoy. I wonder if this could be a spot where the Washington football team that we all hoped they could be might pop up and pick off Jameis a couple times and kind of take advantage of this offensive line situation here. What do you think? Are you playing any Alvin Kamara? I feel weird about how the script of this game could go.
Yeah, no, if I'm paying that much for a running back, it's easily for Henry. He projects like 4 or 5 points higher than Kamara. And Kamara doesn't even project that low owned. So I'm not even sure he's like a great GPP pivot. For me, I'd much rather just live in the mid-range with the running backs if I'm not playing Henry and find ways to spend the salary elsewhere.
Well, let's get down to the mid-range, because I have a feeling that you guys aren't going to be paying up 7,600 for Austin Eckler. I mean, are you, Chief? I bet Carty's not, because I'm going to get down to some of these mid-range guys. I mean, Saquon Barkley's in that range. Zeke Elliott's in that range with a big Q next to his name, which I find pretty interesting. It feels like he's going to go. Both him and Amari Cooper are both questionable, but they said that was all precautionary stuff. Najee Harris here at 6,900. And then whenever we start getting down to the mid-range and even the lower range, it feels like this Samaje Perine stuff way down at 4,300 or wherever he is could start to evaporate with the report that just came out before we got on that, maybe there's some kind of, maybe there's going to be a big, just a total committee there, and who knows between Chris Evans and Samaje Perine. Also, we got the news about it, like with Mixon, like we're I mean, Dalvin Cook. So we're definitely still waiting on some of this stuff. Are there any of these guys that you're looking at here before we talk about some of these dudes that I know Carty's going to be interested in, namely one Mr. Lenny Fournette?
There's one guy in this range that I definitely like. It's Najee Harris. He's, I think, every bit as good as Eckler, Barkley, Elliott, Aaron Jones, Dalvin Cook, like all the guys in this range. And he's the only one under 7K. Like, I don't know why people don't like him more. Like, I guess we have him projected fairly high, but it's just, he feels like the kind of guy that people don't like to play. Like last week, the Blitz really liked him and nobody really wanted to play him. But like, he gets Alvin Kamara target share and he gets Derrick Henry's carry share. Like, his volume is just insane. And people are like, well, he plays on the Steelers. Can I really play Najee Harris? It's like, yes, you can. So if I don't play Henry, I'm definitely playing Harris. And you could even wind up with builds where you play both of them. But Harris is very much one of the best plays of the whole week, I feel like. He just gets so much freaking volume. And yeah, Pittsburgh sucks and the O-line sucks and whatever else you want to say. Volume is king for running backs.
I just wanted to clarify what I was talking about earlier with the whole Bengals situation. The report that came out right before we came on from Tom Pelissero saying that Bengals Joe Mixon is trending toward playing in some capacity, in quotes, on Sunday versus Packers. So that Carty
That just rules out the whole backfield if that happens.
It's just like, what are you going to do? Right. All right. So as we move down here, is just X them out, right? As we kind of continue moving down here, Chief, any interest in playing? I've heard some talk about maybe kind of going back to the well on your guy Chuba Hubbard. It doesn't look like Christian McCaffrey's going to play. Kareem Hunt has been kind of doing his thing. It doesn't really seem sustainable, but what I'm really most interested in asking you guys about is Damian Williams. He's been a player that at least has had some pedigree in fantasy thus far. He's a good player. He had the bruised thigh to end last game. Obviously, we'll be filling in some capacity with Khalil Herbert. We don't know how this split's going to go. Chief, can I just go back to Carty real quick? Carty, how do you see the Damian Williams split playing out this week? How do you have him projected?
I have him with about 75% of the carries, the rest to Herbert, maybe like 1% to Ryan Nall, and him getting most of the passing work, maybe like 10 to 12% of the targets. So it's a good volume share for Damian Williams for sure. On FanDuel in particular, he's really well priced. I feel like on FanDuel, he's kind of like almost a cash game staple.
Chief, do you like Damian Williams? And then what about some of these other players that we talked about? They're in the mid range. I kind of skipped over James Robinson. If we could get Carlos Hyde inactive again and we could get Urban Meyer to quit acting like such a dolt, he would be a great play if we got the same usage that we saw on, what was that, last Thursday night? What do you think? Or which of these plays in the mid range are you looking at before we start to talk? It looks like we might have lost Chief there for a second. So, Carty, maybe I can ask you, what about James Robinson? Any interest there? Or
Yep. Yeah. So this is the range that I like the most. Okay. You have Williams, you have Najee, you have James Robinson. You pointed it out earlier, like week 1, Jacksonville was super pass heavy, which went completely against expectations because it's Urban Meyer who liked to run in college. It's a rookie quarterback. Like, why are they throwing this much? And over the last few weeks, they've become a run-heavy team the way we expected them to. This is a run-heavy team. Last week, Carlos Hyde was inactive, so it really was the James Robinson show. Hyde probably will be back this week, but Robinson is going to get a bunch of volume on the ground, through the air. We mentioned this is a fairly fast-paced game, in part because just the Jaguars play so fast. But he's just really cheap for what his role in this offense is. He's what, 6K on DraftKings. It's just too cheap. So I like Robinson a lot. There's probably, that pool of like 4 or 5 running backs you're picking from cash games this week, and he's very much in there.
What if we have some kind of, and just, I want to talk to you about Fournette, but just before we get there, 5,500 is Alexander Madison. What if we get some kind of scratch for Dalvin Cook? What does that turn the slate on its head a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. If Cook is out, Madison is the best running back play on the slate, like hands down. Like, it's not close. You play him everywhere or you're terrible at DFS. I guess in cash games you do that. In GPPs, they're a different thing. But he becomes the best running back play on the slate by far. He gets massive volume when Cook is out, on the ground, through the air. Team that loves to run the ball, team that can score points for touchdown equity, and he's 5.5K. So yeah, you're playing Madison for sure if that happens.
It feels like you love Fournette. We've been teasing it, but let's just hear it. We talked about it on the SiriusXM show. One interesting thing that you mentioned this morning that I was completely unaware of is that Miami's actually, via your pace numbers, Miami's actually top 4 in pace.
Yeah, Miami has been running at a very, very fast pace this year. The Bucs, we know, played a fast pace. So this is the fastest paced game on the slate. Bucs project number 2. Miami projects number 4. So combined, they project easily for the fastest paced game. It's a low win situation. The Bucs have a very high team total. They're a 10-point favorite. So it is a great game script for rushing in the second half for Fournette. It looks like Gio Bernard's going to be back, which isn't ideal, but Fournette should still be, involved in the pass game. And he's just way too cheap. Like, he's, 5K or something stupid, like 5.2. So yeah, if there's one running back that I'm confident will be in my lineup this week, it's probably Fournette. But again, you have this group of like 4 or 5 that are really good plays.
as Xavier Worthy just takes in a monster touchdown for the Texas Longhorns against the Oklahoma Sooners. Yeah, all right. Let's keep that going, and let's keep going here with this going with the running backs. Although I'm not even sure who else you're going to talk about, Carty. It doesn't get like with this Joe Mixon news, we get the Samaje Perine stuff out of there. I mean, is there even anything left? Is there anything
if
left?
Mixon's out, like Perine's very much in play for GPPs, maybe even for cash. But if Mixon's playing, even just limited, like you probably shouldn't do it. Maybe like as a GPP dark throw, you play Perine, but otherwise it just kind of rules out the whole thing.
Chief, you were kind of out there as we were talking over some of these mid-range guys. Carty's in on James Robinson. He's in on Leonard Fournette. It seems like those are the kind of guys in that range that he's sort of focused in on. Are you in on those guys, and anybody else who we haven't touched on that you're interested in playing this week?
Yeah, for sure. I do like Chuba Hubbard. Sorry, Dean has spammed my internet and it went out. And I don't know what happened. I'm hardwired. It's so weird. But yeah, love Chuba Hubbard. Love James Robinson. I think James Robinson is probably one of my favorites out of that bunch. And then this is one of those guys where, you know, I've probably lost some money, and I'm fully telling you that I'm just on board because one of these weeks I need him to pay me all my money back. And that's Miles Sanders at 5,700. Like, the price keeps going down. And I mean, God, at some point they got to start running the ball more than 7 times a game with him, right? I mean, gosh, it feels like he should be at least 13 to 15 carries, 3-4 targets. So he's just on my list because he's 5,700 and the price is going down. Like, him and Tony Pollard are about the same price. And I think Pollard's priced up because of performance, not actual involvement in the game, right? Where Zeke is still the bulk carry guy, but they're priced the same. It makes no sense to me. So I'm in there. Damian Harris, of course, at 5,500 against Houston. Man, if they could just give him 20 carries, I mean, I think he could get 2 touchdowns. If he got there. So I think those are the guys I'm interested in. And then Leonard Fournette, like, I mean, we've been on Leonard Fournette, I think, most of the year anyway. So, you know, of course, we're going to be on board at 5,200.
One last thing I want to ask you guys. I'll give you final thoughts on running backs. What about Damian Williams is playing in the late window, as is the San Francisco at Arizona game, sitting at 5,600. Both is Damian Williams and James Conner, and we have Chase Edmonds questionable. If Chase Edmonds didn't play, Carty, how would that make you feel about James Conner? And would you consider a swap off of Damian Williams, or maybe consider getting Damian Williams in a lineup just to give you that optionality there for the late game, since it would be a direct pivot in your flex?
Yeah, Connor would obviously become really interesting if Edmonds is out, because he would be the lead back. We'd probably see some, Jonathan Ward or, Benjamin or something like that, but it would be mostly Connor. I think personally, I prefer Damian Williams. I think his pass game role is a little bit safer. So I think I'd prefer Williams, but Connor would definitely be in play.
Chief, any final thoughts about running back, just the guys, and then Carty, if you could just give your rundown after Chief about just in general from Derrick Henry on down, sort of what the core plays are and the key decision points.
Yeah, I'm in on Derrick Henry as my number one. I do think I'm a little bit higher on Austin Eckler than most other people, just because, I mean, the targets have kind of been up. Najee Harris, absolutely my favorite in the mid-range at 6,900 because of his work in the pass game as well. Just overall volume in general. Then James Robinson, Chuba Hubbard, and then Lenny Fournette, and then I'd be back up to these other guys like Damian Harris, Kareem Hunt, so forth and so on.
Did you mention Zeke, Will? Because I think Zeke is a really good GPP play. Like, because we're going to see ownership on Dak, Amari, CD. Zeke just feels like an awesome leverage play over these guys.
Yeah. Love Zeke. I've played Zeke every week. Yeah. Like all 5 weeks I've played him, or all the weeks he's been on the main slate. Let me say that. So no stopping now for sure.
Texas has now scored 2 touchdowns in the first two minutes of regulation in the Red River rivalry. All right, let's Carty, anything else on running back? You ready to move on? Okay,
I-
let's move on to wide receiver. And Carty, let's just stay with you. Is it a week where you can get in Devontae Adams?
Yeah, I think it is. Similar to Henry, I don't think he's like, you have to have him, but if you can get him, you want to. And you can definitely get at least one of Devontae and Henry. Getting both is a little trickier, but certainly doable. I want to try to get both again. With Devontae, you don't have to say anything else with him aside from just the volume. Just the volume for Devontae is better than literally every other wide receiver in football by a ton, like by so much. Last year, he was getting 36% of the targets when the next best guys were getting like 28, 29, 30. This year, he's doing it again. It's not like he's regressed at all. Like he just gets so much volume and he's really good. So yeah, just play Devontae, I think. He's a 9K guy or a 9.5K guy. His price has come up a little bit, but he's still too cheap.
Chief, do you agree? Are you in on Devontae Adams this week?
Yeah, I like him. I think the main thing for me with Devontae is the fact that at 8,200, what I'm looking at is which one of these running backs is he going to be better than? Because essentially he projects better than every running back outside of Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara. And you can correct me on that if I'm wrong, Carter, but I think that's pretty much what it is, right? Like he projects better than everybody else.
Yes.
So
he even projects better than Kamara.
Right. So, I mean, he's less than both of them, which means that, in my opinion, he probably should be a staple of your lineups. Like, you know, and I think you guys have probably heard me kind of talk about that last week where I'm like, well, but you know, like Travis Kelce, the reason why I play him so much is he typically projects so much better than everybody, right? Even some wide receivers. So I feel the same way this week about, you know, Devontae, where he's 8,200, pretty much projecting better than all the other skill position players. You know, why not get him in and you know, receive your 30% target share he's had over the past, 4 or 5 seasons? I mean, it's pretty much, well, at least three seasons for sure, I think is what it is. But at any rate, I'm in on Devontae for sure.
Green Bay Packers going into this game with their fourth starting offensive line combination of the season. I think that hurts the run game a little bit more than it hurts the really quick, trustworthy passing game that Devontae Adams has been known so much for. Justin Jefferson seems expensive. Nobody is going to play Hopkins at 7,600 based on, you know, his just minuscule target share. DJ Moore, though, has just been really good. We saw last week. Was it last week what Tyreek Hill did to Philly? Was that last?
That was last week.
Yep. My brain gets scrambled from week to week. But I mean, DJ Moore, you could see him having an absolute, just a throbbing monster in this one. Are any of you guys interested in maybe going to any of these guys at the top besides Devontae Adams, or if you get to DJ Moore, et cetera, are you just going to see about finding the extra money to get up to Adams?
Yeah, I mean, DJ Moore, Justin Jefferson, they project well, but you don't have the money for them if you're playing Adams, especially if you're trying to get Henry too. They're GPP guys, you know, in your stacks or one-offs or whatever for me.
Chief, any interest in those guys? And then as we continue to move down, I mean, Adam Thielen is much cheaper, 1,100 cheaper than Justin Jefferson. And when I close my eyes and think about this slate, it's like 99 times out of 100, I just dream about Adam Thielen catching at least one touchdown in this deal. We have AJ Brown coming back against the pathetic Jacksonville Jaguars. He's only 6,500. Keenan Allen just seems too cheap. I mean, CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz has been really swindling him lately, but 6,200. I mean, my goodness, a lot of the Amari Cooper 6,100. Some of these, I mean, Odell Beckham Jr. You know that Baker Mayfield is going to feel like he needs to get him back for letting him down last week in such a major way. It feels like this area right here. I mean, Jamar Chase will be going up against a Jair Alexander-less Green Bay secondary, Marvin Jones Jr. in a good spot versus Jacksonville. I mean, this is a good range, right? This is a good range. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm in for sure. You know, a lot of those guys that you named are, you know, definitely guys I'm in. I did want to revisit DJ Moore briefly, just because, man, he's getting so much volume right now. I mean, he's pretty much, I don't want to say guaranteed, because guaranteed could be far off. He could very well come out and get 5 targets this game, but I don't think he's going to drop off from, you know, basically averaging 11 targets to 5. So I do think he's kind of in this upper echelon tier where I'd absolutely be playing him over DeAndre Hopkins right now, along with everyone else. So I don't want anybody to think that's a secret. But DJ Moore has kind of inserted himself, especially this season, as a big-time number 1 receiver in target volume, production, on the field, you name it, he's there. So did want to do that. I do think A.J. Brown this week is very interesting, being that, I mean, God, who else is Tannehill going to throw the ball to besides him and Derrick Henry? Not insulting any NFL players. I clearly understand they have more guys, but A.J. Brown should, in theory, I mean, have a week that's similar to what could be a DJ Moore or a Devontae Adams at a very, very discounted price. So I like him a lot. CD, same thing. The Eagles are gonna have to throw the ball, so I like Devontae Smith. Odell Beckham, I like him as well at 6K. That is not getting into that double-digit target range yet, but we know this is a guy that, if he is completely healthy, can kind of explode. I did, and this isn't a survey question, but this is one that I really wanted to ask Carty. And I do have a survey question, but this isn't it. How do we feel about Brandon Cooks this week at 6,100 going against the Patriots?
Yep.
Knowing that overall he's had so much volume most weeks. They kind of know he didn't get there against Buffalo. But how do we feel about Brandon Cooks? He's kind of the guy I'm right on the fence where I'm like, ooh, could be a slate breaker, but just I'm trying to get a little bit more insight. So, if you don't mind, AD, I'm going to kick this one to Carty.
Yeah, the Blitz really likes Cooks this week more than other systems seem to. I think it's tough to try to actually stack this game, but in terms of as a one-off or a secondary stack, I think you're getting some low ownership for some really high upside guys here. Cooks on the Houston side and Jacoby Myers on the New England side as a secondary stack. I love this week. Both of these guys just get insane volume, both 25 to 30% target shares. Cook has even been higher than that this year. That's going to come down. He's not going to get 40% the way he has, but he's clearly the guy that Davis Mills is keying on. And they're both in a dome. They're both too cheap. They're both going to be fairly low owned. I really like both of them a lot.
On one side, you get Brandon Cooks' revenge. On the other side of the coin, though, man, I mean, it's the old adage. What does Bill Belichick do? He takes away your best weapon, and there's no doubt who the best weapon for the Texans is. So, Carty, speaking of Jacoby Myers, let me just mention some of these names that people have been talking about, or that at least over at Roster Watch, some of in our projection systems looked like they were pretty good values. Jacoby Myers, which feels, I mean, you just talked about him. Tyler Boyd, I've heard talk about him. And then getting down here, it's just I have a lot of interest in maybe looking at this Laviska Shenault, Jalen Waddle area at 4,800. You even hear some talk about Darnell Mooney down at 4,700, and then going even farther down from there in your Daniel Jones teams with no Sterling Shepard, with no Darius Slayton this week. Can we see more Kadarius Toney down at 4K? Those are some of the plays that I've been kind of focused in on. I'd like to hear if the Blitz likes any of those guys or any of these guys that are a little bit more in this cheapy range.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys in that 5K-ish range that the Blitz really likes this week. Again, it's the type of week where there isn't any standout wide receiver. I mean, I guess aside from Devontae, where you're you have to have these guys. It really likes the Dallas guys, of course. It really likes the Giants guys. With Shepard and Slayton out, Kadarius Toney's 4K. He got big volume last week. Kenny Golladay is a really good play, I think, on both sites, FanDuel in particular. This is just a game. We talked about it with Daniel Jones. It projects fast pace. They're going into a dome. Daniel Jones has been good this year. This is a fairly pass heavy offense with a pass heavy game script. And all these guys are too cheap. The Giants, I think are one of the best, some of the best values on the whole slate, just up and down the whole roster. So I like Golladay. I like Toney. I like Myers and Cooks. I like T. Higgins. You mentioned Chase a little bit earlier, but T. Higgins at 5K seems a little too cheap just because he's coming back from the injury. And Antonio Brown is the other guy in this range I really like. I like Buck stacks in general because you're going to get leverage off of Fournette because they're a pass-heavy team to begin with, high total. Just I like that whole passing attack. But Antonio Brown at 5.2 just seems like the clear best value here among them. So I think all those guys are in play in cash games and certainly in GPPs.
All right, Cardi, we'll have you give the one your complete rundown here of the position before we move on to tight end. But I want to hear from Chief. Chief, from the mid range on down, what are you looking at? What are you interested in? Who are you most excited about firing up?
Well, can I cover something like on FanDuel real quick? I did want to plug that in, but we talked about it already. But Jacoby Myers and Brandon Cooks, even on FanDuel, I think that mini stack is big time. I know it's half point PPR, but I mean Jacoby Myers is 5,900, Brandon Cooks is 6,300. Like to me that's value especial in my book. So I like that. With DJ Chark out, I do think also on FanDuel, we don't know whether exactly where the target share is going to shake out, but Marvin and Laviska Shenault I think are pretty good plays there, along with AJ Brown at 6,900. So I'm really I really like those guys there. Last play from FanDuel. This is a guy that we've talked about. Well, no, I don't think we've talked about him, but it's in the Carolina game where while the targets may not be, they're consistently. Last game he did have 10 targets in the game where they kind of had to throw the ball, and that's Devontae Smith, right? I like Jalen Hurts this week, so Devontae Smith at 6K on FanDuel with a little bit of that Carolina run back at like a guy like DJ Moore or something like that. I really, really like that. So now back to DK. I'm kind of just focused in on a lot of these same guys, but Cardi talked about Antonio Brown at 5,200. I think is a little bit too cheap, especially with Gronk out, and not that he doesn't have tight ends, but we saw in that last game against the Patriots, if one of he had 11 targets, could have had more points than this. A big 40, 50-yard play comes back on a holding penalty. So Antonio Brown very well could have had over 100 yards receiving, 8 catches, which would have put him squarely in place. So, these are just guys I like. And then once again, back on DK, Laviska Shenault at 4,800, against Tennessee, I think is also in play. And the Miami receivers, right? We didn't talk about Jacoby Brissett much, but this team is going to have to throw the ball just as much as anybody. I mean, we've seen what the Buccaneers do. They're going to, essentially shut down the run. Jalen Waddle, I think at 4,800 is in play. Both of these Miami receivers, Devontae Parker, I know he seemingly has a questionable tag all year, but he's in play. So those are two other guys I wanted to plug in.
Cardi, you want to give a quick rundown of wide receiver, then we'll blast through tight end and get to the Blitz survey and talk about some stacks.
The one other guy we have to mention is Curtis Samuel. His price hasn't gone up since last week on DraftKings. He's still 3K, still questionable. So we don't know what his snap count's going to be, but De'Ami Brown is out. Cam Sims is out. So you'd think they're going to, hopefully, if he's able to, rely on him a little bit more. So he's a good way to make some stuff work for cheap. But wide receiver, Devontae Adams is the clear top guy. Then I think you're looking at a lot of guys from the Dallas Giants game. Amari and CD are both great. Tony and Galladay, I think, are really good. Cooks Myers on opposite sides of their game, I think, are really good. Keenan Allen's good. Curtis Samuel's cheap. It's one of those weeks where there isn't you have to play 3 of these 4 guys. There's a bunch that are options.
At the let's go ahead and move on to the tight end position, and this just a pathetic deal this week. I think on DraftKings, clearly Darren Waller's in play. I know that probably a lot of people will be paying down for Dalton Schultz, maybe Mike Gesicki, with the way that Jacoby Brissett has been kind of targeting him lately. I don't really know. I've had some interest in maybe Jonnu Smith or one of these New England guys. It's just really hard. I mean, Evan Ingram is another dude who seems like he'd be pretty popular.
That's the guy. That's the guy you're playing this week in cash games, at least.
Yeah, but over on FanDuel, it's like if you're not paying all the way down to some kind of Ricky Seals Jones or something like that, it's like it just feels like you just pay up for Waller because there just isn't as big a difference in price between. You're looking at a $4,000 difference in price on DK versus only like a $2,000 sub $2,000 difference in price between these Dalton Schultzes and these kind of these dirt balls like this. Chief, what do you think about what do you think about tight end this week? Is there anybody that's standing out to you?
Yeah, and it's actually those guys that you talk about versus Waller. Like, I think with Waller, because he's priced up so much, what we're doing is we're basically taking his long-term numbers and saying Darren Waller is absolutely the best tight end, right? In terms of volume. In the short term, though, Hawkinson, Schultz, guys like that, even Zach Ertz, who nobody probably wants to talk about. But hey, don't look now. His targets are going up every game, and he's continued to like the game against Dallas, 7 targets, 4 receptions, 53 yards and a touchdown. Not guaranteed a touchdown, but the game against Kansas City, 8 targets, 6 catches, 60 yards, and nobody's talking about it. It's just like Zach Ertz doesn't exist. Dallas Goedert is the guy. He gets on the targets. Guess what? That's a lie. Couldn't be further from the truth. I like Zach Ertz this week in a game where they're going to be behind, have to throw the ball. Not a lock button, of course, but I think he's a guy that is probably going to go overlooked that we're just not talking about, right? Like,
Well, you'll never believe this, man, but my radio co-host this morning made a similarly impassioned plea for playing Zach Ertz this week. So it's there must be something in the air about this whole Zach Ertz thing for sure.
I mean, it's not in the air; it's in the numbers. I'm just looking at what's happening on the field. Look, okay, so let's do it this way. I know it's tight end, we're getting logjam, but Dalton Schultz is more popular because he got 7 targets in week 3 and 8 targets in week 4. He had 6 in week 1 and 2 in week 2, right? Okay. And then we're looking at TJ Hawkinson. We're looking at Walt. Like, there aren't that many tight ends that have the volume that he has. Like, those are the facts, but he's not going to be as popular for whatever reason. And I will be playing him.
Cool.
Absolutely playing him.
Carty, who have we not mentioned at tight end that deserves consideration?
There's a couple guys, but I mean, the guy that is the most obvious on DraftKings is Evan Engram. Like, you just play him in cash games and that's it. Like, we love this environment. We love this game for the Giants. We've talked about it a lot. He's 3.2K or whatever he costs. He's stupid cheap, especially with Shepard and Slate out. Like, he's going to be the number 2 or the number 3 option for them. So just play Engram there. On FanDuel, they make it very easy to pay up for tight ends, pay up for Waller. And then you're just playing guys in your stacks or as one-offs or whatever. So like you mentioned Mike Gesicki. I really like Buck stacks. Gesicki makes a lot of sense as a run back in a Buck stack, that kind of thing.
Cool. All right. Speaking of stacks, we're to the Blitz survey. So let's hear from both of you guys. Chief, I want to hear your favorite stacks, and how you're looking to build them. And then we'll hear from Carty.
Yeah, my favorite is actually way off the board this week. I've already talked about it. I've already talked about it, but listen, I've been on these Jacksonville stacks with Derrick Henry run back. Like, Tennessee has been struggling all year. This just didn't start with the Jets last week. So let's just put that out there, right? They've struggled all year. So love the Jacksonville stacks. I think this is an opportunity for them to keep trying to, crank it out. I know the controversy with their coach. They still got to strap it up and go out there and play. I think it's an affordable stack, right? Carty, we've already talked about the fact that, they're playing really fast paced. So love, Jesus, what's the guy's name? I'm forgetting his name now. Trevor Lawrence with Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault, run back with Derrick Henry and possibly some AJ Brown.
What do you think, Carty? Favorite stacks and how are you constructing them?
Yeah, I think Dallas is going to be popular but good. I think San Francisco is maybe going to be popular but too popular. I really love the Giants. Giants project straight up as the best stack on the Blitz stack page this week, and they're not going to be the highest owned stack. I like the Bucks a lot, and then I think maybe you sprinkle in some Chargers, some Vikings, stuff like that. Maybe some Detroit even wouldn't be terrible. But yeah, really Giants, Bucks, some Cowboys. Those are your top ones.
All right, we'll be moving on to conviction and consequences, where we will be assigning last week's 4th place loser in the 4-man, of course, including our producer Steve. Devin Devin taking over today, but Steve, our usual producer, we will be assigning Will his quarterback. Hopefully he gets up off the mat this week. I have a feeling that Will gets up off the mat. Just a quick reminder, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe here to the Rotogrinders page. You can check out rotogrinders.com for daily strategy shows that will help you win in FanDuel and in DraftKings, and also just tons of free daily fantasy sports advice. There's also the podcast feed where this show will be, and tons of other shows that you can subscribe to. That's the RG Daily Fantasy Football pod feed. Of course, you can find Carty's stuff, rotogrinders.com/the-blitz. All right, boys, we got to assign Will a quarterback before we get into our conviction plays. Steve isn't here to give his suggestions, so let's just look. Let me look through the old player pool here. We don't want to give him somebody too swindly. He loves Trevor Lawrence. Is that too nice?
No, I think Trevor Lawrence is a fair one to give him, because it's not like he's a great raw play. Like Chief likes him, I think, in part because he's going to be low owned and all that. So I think Lawrence is good.
It's his guy this week. Let's give him Trevor. Let's give him Trevor Lawrence. All right, let's get off the mat, Will. Okay. All right. So as I mentioned, my name's Alex Dunlap. You can find me on Twitter at RosterWatch. Find my content at rosterwatch.com. You can also hear me on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern on Saturdays, 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern for the game day edition. Hey, tune in before the Rotogrinders show start. They start right at 9:30, I think, a.m. Eastern. So it's a good primer on Sunday mornings to get you ready for the rest of the great slate breakdowns over here. Derek Carty, you can find him on Twitter at Derek Carty. Again, the Blitz, rotogrinders.com/the-blitz. We're here every week. Watching this video is part of the premium package over at Rotogrinders, and also in the Blitz projection package. All that stuff you can pull into Lineup HQ. You can use it to make 150 lineups. You can use it to just crank out your optimal lineups. You can choose the players that you like and have a Carty approved build built completely around it. It's the Blitz, rotogrinders.com/the-blitz. Of course, we're also here with the Chief, Will Priester, at Chief Justice 06 on Twitter, and one of the just maniacal providers of all the fantasy sports information that you could ever imagine. You can follow him on Twitter again at Chief Justice 06. All right, boys, we're finally here. Our conviction plays, the plays that you'll be damned if you see in the four-man that aren't in your lineups. Chief, I think I know who you're going to pick. I'm going to start with you. Who's your conviction play?
It's actually Zach Ertz.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's Zach Ertz. I mean, he's going to be in there. I like where the targets are going. I like the uptick in production. You know, I think for the price, you know, you're looking across the landscape of tight end. Zach Ertz is still 3,400 on DK. And Dallas Goedert's 5,100. Makes no sense. So Zach Ertz this week, I didn't have Kelsey for the run back, right? And so Zach Ertz will be in there. That's my conviction play.
All right, Carty. So the chat's apparently asking for some props. So we're gonna interrupt our trying to get the hell out of here on time. You got a few props you can give them, Chief? You got any prize picks?
Oh man, Carty, you have any props? You know I got some ready to go all the time.
Let's give the people some props. Let's give them some props.
I got plenty of props. You can see the Blitz's props out there. But the props that look really good this week in the Blitz are like all the Davis Mills props, like over completions, over yards, over.
So gross.
It's so gross, but he's in the dome. He's got the great game script for it. He projects just so much better than the line. So I like the Davis Mills under interceptions, like all the Davis Mills props. There's obviously plenty of other good ones, but that's like the ones that really drew my eye this week.
Chief, you got a few that you really like?
Let me go.
Any 5-star gold ribbon?
No, I do. Let me hop. You guys know I'm like massively on prize picks, like so much. So I'm giving it to you from that perspective. Give me Zach Wilson over 235.5 in the London game. Not worried about it. Give me Sam Darnold. I talked about this last week. If they're going to continue to give me Sam Darnold I got Sam Darnold like 250 at one point this week because they thought McCaffrey was coming back. I thought, well, that's stupid. He should have more. It makes no sense. So I got him at 264.5 over. Jacoby Brissett. This is an interesting one. I got him over 22.5 completions. Don't think the team's going to be able to run the ball that much. Mac Jones over 249.5 passing yards. And then this is the one. and it's only because they're going to be down one of their best wide receivers. I've got Cordero Patterson over 36.5 receiving yards.
Oh, that's
just,
a lock.
I
Yeah,
mean, it just feels like he's going over. So those are my main ones this week, and I'll have a few more as I dig in today. But I mean, those are like my top 5 as of right now.
All right, well, there you go. Chat, you got your prop talk. Ask and you shall receive. Carty, let's get your conviction play.
I'm just going to say Giants stack because I just think all the Giants are fantastic plays. They're going to be too low owned. If you run optimal lineups in the blitz, like you're getting some Giant stacks like mixed into the top 20 optimal lineups. You're getting like Jones, Tony, Ingram lineups, Jones, Galladay, Ingram lineups. So just all the Giants. That's my conviction.
For me, I mean, Mike, I wanted to say Adam Thielen because I'm going to play Adam Thielen against you guys. He's 100% getting in the box. But the play that I have the most conviction around is the play that everybody else loves, and of course, it is Derrick Henry versus the pathetic Jacksonville Jaguars. So for Chief, for Carty, Alex. This has been the Blitz Week 5. We're getting the hell out of here.